All right. Welcome, everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this live episode, also the host of Smart Business Revolution podcast. And I'm here with my friend and business partner, Dr. Jeremy Weisz. Dr. Weisz, how are you
I'm
today?
excited. This is one of my favorite topics of all time, so I can't wait to dig into it.
Yes, absolutely. And go check out some of my past podcast episodes. Check out some of Jeremy's past podcast episodes. We've got some great episodes for you there in the archives. I've had founders or CEOs of Netflix, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, Jeremy, P90X, Orlando Magic, a few others, Einstein Bagels. Who else?
Pixar,
Pixar.
Atari.
Some amazing
Yeah.
founders.
Smart Business Revolution for John and Inspired Insider for me.
And of course, we are also the co-founders of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And this live episode, we're going to be talking about how to set up for success an outsourced business development and sales rep process. And so we're going to dive into that in a moment. But first, before we do, I want to give a couple shout outs. Quick to David Nilsson. He's the co-founder of Doxa 7. They do outsourced borderless talent. Great guy. I was just on the call with him earlier this week. If you have any needs for filling staffing needs, and who doesn't these days, go check him out. And then Jeremy, anyone you want to give a shout out for?
Yeah, I always like the episode I did with Nick Aracco. Was fantastic, and he's got an amazing network of CHROs and people in the executive space all over the country. Some of the biggest executives all over North America. Check that episode out.
CFOs as well, yeah.
CFOs, CHROs, and Todd Taskey, talks about selling businesses and some of the pitfalls because he helps people, specifically agencies, sell their business.
Yeah, Potomac Business Capital is his business. If you have an agency you're thinking about selling, go check him out. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get their clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. You can go to rise25media.com or email us at support@rise25media to learn more about that. But let's dive into this topic, Jeremy. So, there's a lot of companies that struggle with this idea of creating an outsourced business development process, or maybe they have some biz dev reps in-house that are struggling to get good quality leads in the door. And so we thought that this would be helpful.
In addition, a sales development rep and sales development process as well.
Right. And so what we want to talk about here is kind of two pieces. One is how to set up the rep for success, and two, how to set up the process for success. And first, it boils down to, what a lot of people do is they lead with an ask. You're asking others to give you their time. You're asking for them to be inconvenienced, to basically show up for what a lot of people realize is a sales pitch, And so I think that's why a lot of people don't get high quality people, high quality leads coming in the door. So what we say is better is to lead with a give. It will actually save you time. So talk about that, Jeremy, the difference between leading with a give rather than an ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, increases your percentage. And if you lead with an ask, like obviously maybe out of 100 people you contact, maybe there's one that happens to be in the market. Again, when we're talking about cold emailing or cold contacting people, very small percentage. And we all get those messages. I mean, I get numbers of them a day it's all about their services. And maybe if I happen to be in the market for that, but usually I'll ask a friend for a referral or someone they trust anyways. So if you lead with a give, like how do you get, like when John and I think about reaching out, how do you reach out in a giving fashion so that it's of value to that person? So not about us, but about them and how we can serve what they're working on. Right.
Right. And some people might just ask a really broad question, like, how can I help? Which sometimes isn't all that helpful. It might seem at first value like it would be helpful. But if you aren't sure, or you haven't talked with someone ever before or in a long time, it can come out of right field. It's, you're not sure how to handle that kind of conversation. So it doesn't end up working out that well. But, we believe in combining content marketing with relationship building. And content marketing, you may not believe it, but it is a give. When you give someone exposure by creating some content, you are actually giving value to them, even if you don't have a tremendous following or audience or exposure, all that kind of stuff. So there are different flavors of content marketing there, and we've done it all: books, articles, video series, podcasts. There's more and more digital tools available to us these days. So let's talk about some of the different pros and cons of those different tools.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, it's featuring them and profiling them. And you've been featured in books. You were featured in Dory Clark's book. And when you were featured in that book and it came out, guess what jumped to the top of our list to do, even though we had so much other things to do, was promoting that book that you were in.
Yeah.
The article, video series, podcast, obviously we're a big proponent of the podcast. We've been doing it for over a decade and helping others do it for over a decade. And it's because it combines all of those pieces and it's continuous, it's ongoing. And John, I mean, you wrote for the White House, you wrote or speechwriter for the governor of California. If you asked me to write an article, I would have gotten one out in the past 10 years, but I can talk to people and I can have a conversation. So I find it a 30-minute conversation. I can do 2 to 3 episodes a week. And obviously, you know, we have a team that will write the post and everything, but I can do that and get 2 to 3 blog posts. When we think of podcasts, it gets repurposed as a blog post. It goes on all the podcast channels. It can go a video on YouTube. It goes across, 15 to 20 different channels. So I can have a conversation.
So when you evaluate these different tools, a book, an article, a video series, a podcast, we've done all of them. What we found is that a lot of them are just require too much complexity. Like a book could take 6 months, could take a year to come out. So after the course of a year, I mean, books are great, but after the course of a year, finally, then, you get that exposure, you give that exposure to the people who are featured in the book, the 10 or 20 people or whatever. It just takes too long, too much process.
And you've done articles. I mean, you wrote for Forbes and Entrepreneur. And again, like, I think there's a situation of an and, not an or. So like you can combine all of these into one, but if you're looking at, maybe there's a spectrum of complex to simple.
Right. And then the other one is like some kind of YouTube show or video series or something like that. We're not fans of putting all your eggs in one basket. If one tech company controls your future and can shut down your channel, that's not a good thing. So we do have YouTube channels. We put content on YouTube all the time, but I would never want that to be the one thing that you have just because it's putting all your eggs in one basket. So that's content marketing. Obviously, we're big fans of using the podcast because of the number of relationships you can build over the course of time. It's just really efficient use of your time. And then the other thing that matters when it comes to this process of using content marketing to build relationships is how you message it. And you have to have a really well-written, copywritten message that gets a result. And Jeremy, you have devoted thousands of hours to studying copywriting, talking to some of the best copywriting of the 21st century, 20th and 21st century, and breaking down and even done like 6-figure training programs that you've attended where you've studied this sort of thing. So talk a little bit about the importance of copywriting.
Yeah, I mean, when we're doing, again, with the outreach message, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on email, whether it's wherever it's going, text message, those elements, a good copywritten message, one, is about them. There's a give there. Also, there has to be some kind of social proof there. So it's a copywriting 101, right? And people will write, it's one of the formulas, there's many formulas, but AIDA, right? Attention, interest, desire, action. What is that? Do they have those components in there? There has to be some social proof in all those elements for it to be successful and it come across as something that they're going to respond to, right? The goal of a message is to get a response or get whatever action you want them to take, right?
Yep.
So all of that has to be created to have that come true.
Right. Or else they're not going to take any action. And go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of things can go wrong when we zoom out a little bit, right? Of this whole business development, sales development process. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So I think we're going to touch on a few of these things, and it's similar to copywriting and sending out, whether it's direct mail or email or text. So you have to have the right targeted list.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the right message to that list. You have the right tools and software to deliver those messages. You have to have the right offer. You have to have the right way of conducting a conversation with that person. And the right way if it's a podcast specifically for a give, right way of conducting the actual interview. And then a key is, even if you do all those right, John, you know what I'm going to say next,
A lot
and
of
you
people don't follow
don't
up.
have the right way of following up or don't follow up, all could be lost.
Yeah. So all those pieces are critical. Let's start at the top. So first of all, write target list. Talk about the importance of that, because a lot of people spray and pray, or they target the wrong people. Talk about that.
Yeah. And I forgot, there's some Gary Halbert quote, and I apologize, Bond, who's his son, if I'm going to butcher it, but the one thing he wants out of everything is a starving crowd, right? So if you have the right list, or you're in the right place, you want that right list, right? Are these people starving, or for your product or service, or it's a good compliment, right?
Right.
So
they're thirsty. They're ready for what you want.
So one of the things we will do for ourselves and for some of the clients is we will zero in on their best referral partners, and it's not just clients and referral partners, and get really granular with maybe the position that person's in, and generate a hyper targeted list.
Yeah.
For that.
Right. So that's a key piece, is how to put that list together. And then the next one is, we kind of touched on it already, but having the right message that you use, the outreach message. And
you
I
talk about a velvet rope.
Right. So I like to say that you use a velvet rope. So not anyone can get in. It's got some exclusivity to it. The velvet rope is the idea of some kind of like exclusivity to it. And you also have very specific criteria about who's a fit and who's not. So it's not just like anyone can come in, but certain exclusive types of people that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So
that's important, because you don't want to, if I was reaching out to you, John, and I said, hey, I want anyone who,
has a pulse.
Has right. But if I say something like, listen, I'm looking to really connect and have in this book or article or video or podcast someone who's done a high level of writing at different places, you're like, oh yeah, that's me. I've done a high level of writing at the White House and the governor of California, et cetera.
Yeah. So that's another one. And then the next is right tools and software. And one big mistake that people make, well, for one, people use LinkedIn as a lead channel, which is fine. They've cracked down a lot in outreach. And so it's harder and harder to do outreach that way. You can use email as a channel for reaching out to people. Hard part about that is you don't want to reach out from an email that comes from your primary domain, because if you do that, you could get blacklisted and you will lose all your traffic, and your emails won't get delivered to people.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of like deliverability issues if you start landing, and all the email experts will talk about this. If you land in the spam, or you land in the social or promotions, then even if you have the right message and they never read it, you're done. Right. So you have to have the right. So, again, we have to have monitoring tools and other software to make sure the deliverability is on point.
Right. In addition, seasoned domains that you use for the outreach itself. And then offer, which relates to the velvet rope piece, but you need to make it enticing for them to come be a participant in this content marketing that you are creating. And then a next one is right way of conducting the pre-interview conversation. So a lot of our clients, they will do a short little conversation prior to that creation of that content, to just ensure that it's a good fit all around. Ensure that the person that they're reaching out to is a good fit. And sometimes it's the CEO or founder or owner of the business that's doing that. Other times it is a team member, a member of the team conducting that call, right? But it's a shorter call, and the purpose is to determine if they're a fit, to qualify them for the content that you are seeking to create.
Yeah. And sometimes in that conversation, you can, we call it a pre-interview conversations, because is it a fit? But then you can get into prepping them a little bit for the conversation. So it makes for a better experience on the actual interview. So you ask some pre-interview questions, which we coach people on, so that when you get to the interview, you feel prepped, you feel like you're going to create some great content together.
Right. And then that leads to the next step, which is the right way of conducting the actual interview itself. And, a lot of people like to think about just the actual interview itself. But we like to say that, the conversation before and after and during, all three are really of equal importance. How you handle the pre-conversation, how you handle the actual conversation during the interview, how you handle afterwards. All of those are important.
Yep. And then the next thing is the follow-up. I want to mention, while you're reaching out to the people, so there's follow-up after the interview, but there's also follow-up just to even get that scheduled, right? When you get to the pre-interview conversation, we may have sent 3 or 4 emails to the person, because people are busy. So they may see it and I'll get to it later. Not that they don't want to do it. And then once they respond, we may send 2 or 3 or 4 manual emails back and forth, just making sure, answering any questions and getting them scheduled, right? So there could be 7 to 9 emails exchanged just to get them onto the call. And now you have the pre-interview call and then the interview call, and now you have to follow up after the interview beyond.
Right. And that's a key point as well. First, I swear, 5 years of doing a podcast, I made the mistake of not consistently following up and emailing my guests to let them know that their episode went live. And that was a total mistake. So now we have a process where we do that, where our team is sending messages and I'm CC'd on those messages, so then I can follow up with that person and we're letting them know about it. We're also putting it on social. We're tagging them so that they can easily share it on social. But then it's also an opportunity to follow up on something that we might have discussed during the initial interview that I wanted to follow up on. So having a process in place for that follow up afterwards is critical as well. So I think that wraps it up. Any final thoughts, Jeremy,
No.
on how to create a successful outsourced business development and sales development process?
I think, the people that we talk to who have set up this, you have a business development rep or a sales rep, they love this because it makes those people's job easier. It's easier for them to reach out in a giving fashion. They get on a higher percentage of calls, right? Because there's also that, well, doesn't this take more time? Right, John?
Right.
Well, doesn't this take more time?
Right. Which I'll hold this up in terms of the time commitment. I'll hold this up against, doing dozens of calls with unqualified people any day of the week, because this process will filter out in many cases, people will disqualify themselves if they're not a fit, right? If you say the parameters are, we want a CMO of a hospital chain with 17 locations or more, those who have 16 or fewer would disqualify themselves. Or if you say we want a tech focused VC firm managing partner in Northern California, those people who don't fit those criteria would disqualify themselves. And you won't waste that time having those calls. You'll only have those calls with those people who are a good fit. And again, you're doing it for the purpose of content marketing, for giving them exposure. Everyone wants exposure, or many people do. A lot of people do. And so you will get much higher caliber conversations that are happening. So that's it. Jeremy, where can people go to learn more about you and Rise 25?
Yeah, you can go to rise25.com, learn more. We have lots of content and videos. You can go to inspiredinsider.com to check out other episodes, and you can go to Smart Business Revolution to check out other podcast episodes as well.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everyone.